April 23, 1931, a massive 160-ton passenger train tearing through western North Carolina was violently upended, ripping up 100 yards of track in a terrifying display of twisted steel. It wasn't a mechanical failure, wasn't a train robbery, and it wasn't a broken rail. It was a 6-year-old kid. A child playing with rocks managed to bring down a mountain-climbing mechanical monster. Today, we're breaking down the insane story of the 1931 Drexel train wreck. To understand the sheer scale of the disaster that unfolded that afternoon, we have to look at the daily reality of the railroad in 1931. This wasn't a sleepy, slow-moving rural freight line. According to the Southern Railway Company schedules from the spring of that year, this specific corridor was a high-priority route known as the AS Line, otherwise known as the Asheville District. It served as a vital hub linking the rugged Blue Ridge Mountains directly down to the industrial textile centers of the North Carolina foothills. Our story begins on the afternoon of April 23rd, 1931. This particular train was an eastbound run that had descended the heavy grades of the mountain, departing Asheville and making its scheduled afternoon stops through Marion and the county seat of Morganton. It was fully loaded with heavyweight steel passenger coaches, express cars, and bags of U.S. mail. Its next major destination was the bustling hub of Hickory, before it was scheduled to terminate later that evening at the massive rail yards in Salisbury, North Carolina. By roughly 4:15 p.m., the train was clipping along at nearly 60 miles an hour, clearing the straightaways of Burke County. On board, dozens of passengers were relaxing, listening to the steady clatter of the tracks, completely unaware that just ahead, in the small town of Drexel, a local 6-year-old boy named Charlie Whitener Jr. had just wandered onto the right-of-way. Bored and looking for some entertainment, Charlie began gathering heavy, solid creek stones from the ditches. He carefully piled them on top of the steel rails and then hid behind a nearby fence, eagerly waiting to watch what would happen when the high-speed train arrived. At exactly 4:15 p.m., the 482 locomotive struck the pile of rocks. To a 6-year-old, a rock seemed small, but the physics of a high-speed train derailment are violent, chaotic, and completely unforgiving. The heavy creek stones jammed underneath the front 4 pilot wheels. Because those small guide wheels are designed to lead the train, jamming them instantly forced them up and over the lip of the rail. The moment those pilot wheels lost their grip on the track, the immense forward momentum and 160-ton weight of the engine instantly worked against it. The conductor and engineer had absolutely no time to react. The massive locomotive sheared off the rails and acted like a giant steel plow, violently tearing up over 100 yards of solid wooden railroad ties and heavy steel track, snapping them like toothpicks. The momentum finally gave out, and the giant engine rolled completely onto its side, crashing heavily into the North Carolina dirt. Behind it, the sheer force yanked 3 massive steel passenger coaches off the line. They skidded sideways, tilting precariously over into the bush, their metal frames groaning under the pressure. Ruptured steam lines screamed as pressure escaped the boiler, and from behind the fence, little Charlie Whitener later confessed to the newspapers that he laughed, saying it was a lot of fun seeing the cars piled up, just like when I wrecked my toy train. Local residents ran from their homes towards the track, expecting a literal horror scene. But here's the absolute miracle of the Drexel wreck. There were 0 fatalities. Thanks to the heavy steel construction of these coaches, not a single passenger died, and only 4 people were injured enough to be sent to the hospital, making this one of the most violent, yet miraculously bloodless crashes in state history. Once the dust settled, railroad investigators easily uncovered the truth. Charlie's mother worked nights, and his father was actually serving a separate jail sentence, leaving the 6-year-old completely unattended. Now, a disaster of this scale caused a massive financial crisis. The wreck cost Southern Railway roughly $15,000 in cleanup and repair damages. Remember, this was 1931, the height of the Great Depression. That $15,000 was a staggering fortune, the equivalent of nearly $300,000 in today's money. The kid was obviously too young to be thrown into a jail cell, and his working-class family certainly didn't have $250,000 lying around to pay back a massive railroad conglomerate. So the local judge had to get creative, handing down one of the most bizarre, mind-boggling sentences in North Carolina legal history. The judge officially ruled that the boy's reckless, highly dangerous behavior couldn't have come from pure malice. Instead, the court decided it must have been a result of a medical abnormality, assuming bad tonsils were making the child hyperactive, unruly, and prone to sabotaging heavy machinery. The judge officially ordered that the boy be taken to the hospital to have his tonsils surgically removed as his official punishment and behavior cure. You heard that right. A kid derailed a passenger train, and his court sentence was a mandatory surgery. But what happened to the massive 482 locomotive? Well, 1930 steam engines were built like absolute tanks, because Southern Railway corporate documentation proves that not a single one of their 1450 series mountain locomotives were retired or scrapped due to wreck before the late 40s. We know with 100% certainty that this engine survived. It was hauled out of the mud by heavy steam cranes, towed to the Spencer shops, completely rebuilt with fresh steel, and sent right back out to conquer the mountains for another 20 years. It just goes to show how a tiny split-second decision can completely derail history. And with that, I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching, and if you guys could, like and subscribe, it really helps me out, and I will see you guys trackside on the next adventure.